Head over to miniaturemarket.com. They have thousands of board games at discounted prices like Faiyum. Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here. Today we're going to be going back to ancient Egypt, where we're going to be building roads and settlements and towns, and we're going to be draining swamplands of resources and getting the crocodiles out of there. Today we're going to be engine building as well. Today we're taking a look at Faiyum. This is from designer Friedemann Friese of Power Grid fame. This actually uses a Power Grid market in it. Really cool. Let me show you how this works and I'll see you on the other side. In Faiyum, you're going to be playing cards and building engines, and these cards are going to look something like this. You're also going to be managing money. You're going to be managing resources like wheat and fish and stone and grapes and rows, which are wild. You're going to be playing these cards, doing different things like placing workers onto hexes next to other farmers and gaining resources depending on the hex that you placed it, or maybe placing a settlement onto a hex, paying resources, and then gaining points and money, for example. Now here's the board set up for 3 players, and there's different parts of the board. You have sort of the wheat fields here, you have the vineyards with the grapes here, and you have stone here. These lower lands start with crocodiles, because over the course of the game I showed you one of those cards is you're placing workers onto spots. Now everybody has a hand of starting cards, and again like this, if this one's a farmer, you'd place a farmer out there and gain a resource. Normally they have to be next to one, but if there's no one there, you could place one somewhere. So I would place it like here, for example. If there's a farmer, you basically this person is draining the land. If there's a crocodile, you collect it and get a point for that, and you're going to gain this resource, which in this case is going to be a grape. Now let's say the next player played a farmer from their hand. They're also going to take a worker and place it, but now it has to be adjacent to that first one. So they might place it anywhere on these, or maybe if they want wheat, they go somewhere like here, they'll place a worker, they'll take the wheat, and they'll get a point and a crocodile like this. Now they're going to be sort of building out like this. Now as you play cards, you place them in your discard pile face up, and they stay in that order, and that's extremely important because you're kind of doing deck building in this game, but in a very different way. Because you only got 3 choices on your turn. You could play a card, like I showed you. You could buy a card. And this part's really interesting because it basically uses the same Power Grid market that Friedemann Friese, the designer of Faiyum, used back and then. Now there's 4 cards in the current market that you could see, and by default, these are the prices. However, at the beginning of the round, they each get a discount token, so this one would be 3, for example. Now these do different things. This acts just like one of your other cards, this where you place a worker where there's a settlement, and in this case, you would get 2 stone, for example. It's one way to get resources. Or maybe you're doing a sacrifice and you're able to, place this. Let me show you some of these. Now again, remember, you would have to have bought this card first, for in this case 2, then on a future turn play it, but it allows you to take a building and place it on a spot that has a building available. This one has 2, so once there's 2 there, it's completely built. But this is going to allow you to get rid of a card and get a point in $3, and this would be like sort of thinning out your deck for deck building, if you will. Sometimes you're building bridges in order to go over, over the water, spending resources to do that, but gaining points. Now these cards are in a specific order. Above those are 4 cards that you can't buy. This is the future market. Again, similar to like the Power Grid auctions for the power plants. Now you'll notice that these cards all have numbers on them, and again, it's always lowest to highest. So when someone buys one of those lower cards, a new card will come out of a huge draw deck here, and everything will get sort of updated so it's always in order. So you can see what's coming later in the game for some future planning, but you're not exactly sure when those are going to come. You can have a pretty good idea by looking at maybe what number the cards are, but it will give you some future planning. So you're either playing a card, buying a card, or doing administration. Now, unlike in Power Grid of the bureaucracy step, the administration, you get to choose when to do it, and people can do it on their own turn, and not everyone's doing it in the same round maybe. So number 1 is you're going to get some income, $3 minus the number of cards in your hand. So the more efficient your deck is, meaning the more times you use most of all of your cards, the more money you're going to get every time you do that. You're also going to be able to pull up to 2 workers off the board. Now this is important because as we're placing blocks and workers and stuff, nobody owns anything in the game. It all can be used by other people, which means the interaction in this game is huge. But you get to pull up to 2 of these off, getting $1 for each of these workers. Then you get to get 3 cards back from your hand, from your discard pile. I had recently played this one. It's going in my hand. This is one of my starting cards. I had recently played that sacrifice card. I recently played the stone. These go back in my hand. Anything else stays there, but you can buy this cards for $1 for each additional card you want to draw back. So you've got to be efficiently playing cards in a certain order to get them back without having to spend more money, and that's an interesting twist as well. And then depending on the amount of players, you'd refresh a certain amount of cards. These would slide down, you'd bring up some new cards, put them all in order and things like that. Now, as you can see, from a mechanical standpoint, it's pretty simple. Play a card, buy a card, or administrate. But the complexity of the game comes all the different things you can do with the cards. Like here, you could play this. You could place a small town on the board, on top of a settlement, paying these 3 resources, getting 5 points and $2. Papyrus, you could play that and basically do what the card below it said on your discard pile, basically the one that was on the top at the time. Here you're putting a gardener next to the river, getting a rose, which is great because that's going to give you a wild resource. Maybe you're placing a workshop onto a stone spot. You're placing a worker on a spot that has a workshop, and you're spending stone to gain $5 and 2 points. Maybe you're placing fishermen near the water or the river, and you're getting fish, another resource that doesn't come out right at the beginning of the game. Gem miners, maybe you're placing 1 to 5 workers face down and spending $1 for that. But then after you administrate, you get this card back in your hand, you can do this and take all the ones laying down for $3 each. So you're making $2 per one. Maybe you combo that with this. You play this, you lay them down, you play this, you get to pick them up right away. This would be a great engine. You're doing that the whole game. Now you'll continue this until the entire draw stack is depleted. Now there's been some disaster cards that were seeded at a separate stack along with some other cards, some of the higher blue cards. But I'm showing you a bunch of these to show you that these things, when it gets to this point of the game, it begins the end game where players can no longer do the administrate action. They can basically buy a card, play a card, or they can end the game and take one of the disasters. And this would have been for a 3-player game. This one looks great, but only the second player to pass and to go out would get this. So it's a little bit of a game of chicken, 6 straight points. The first player in a 3-player game to pass would get the sandstorm, but you're not really sure when these are coming out right. But if you've got a ton of money, you could do the treasurer, put up to 12 workers out onto spots and get spend $2 for each of those and get a point for each of those. Or you get to build one of these gold palaces that allows you to basically place on a spot that has sort of a settlement and a town, spend 2 of each of the resources and get 15 points, and then you're out of the game. So lots of like your last final thing. But it's a little bit of game of chicken because you're trying to still play cards, run your engine because you can't administrate, and finding the right time to get out is very interesting, whereas the most points at the end is the winner. All right, now before I get to my final thoughts, I want to let you know that if you like my content, there's now ways to get bonus content like first impression videos well before a review will come out, or for many games I don't even end up reviewing. You can even vote for which games get reviewed on the channel. You can also see me opening up packages and getting content earlier than everyone else. And now you can see what you're missing with a free 7-day trial at patreon.com/GameBoyGeek. All right, first thing I love about this is the Power Grid style market. I love Power Grid, it's one of my favorite games. It works so well here where you have these different cards that are available to buy, and you can see them, but you can only buy the first 4 of them that are numerical. So they're strategically set in certain numbers where the smaller ones are less, and as they get on, they get more and more powerful. But you can see the 4 that you can buy now, but you can also see the 4 that you can't yet buy, but they're gonna be available at some point in the near future, or maybe even later in the future, depending on what that number is. And then when someone buys one, and when it ends up getting replaced, you flip that number over and you reorder everything. So it's one of those things where it might fill up that slot, it might be bigger, one of the bigger ones comes down, and that flowed so well in Power Grid, and it really flows really well right here. I like that the players get to decide when to do their administration action. So they're deciding when they're pulling workers off and making money. They're the ones deciding they have to pull, and one of the big things about the administration is, the reason why that's cool is because like in Power Grid and other things, like it's a flow and everyone does it at the same time. Here, you get to choose when you do that action. It just changes the flow of the game. We're not all in sync. You might be doing one thing, I'll be doing another, and when you do administrate, when I do administrate matters because you may have just pulled the last workers off and now there's nothing for me to pull off, stuff like that. So it matters and I like that. But when you do that, you only take the top 3 cards of your discard pile back. So you're building these engines. But you can buy more. You can spend money to go deeper and deeper into that deck, right? So I love this because you're creating these engines, you're buying these cards, you're creating these things that synergize with each other. You're building these engines to exploit the certain game state. Oh, there's a lot of vineyards that have roads to them, but nothing on them. Oh, this card's great. This allows me to put towns there and get a bunch of stuff, things like that. So you're looking at the state of the board and you're creating engines around what the board looks like. And you're exploiting that game state. But then you're burying those as you're doing that, and as cards become less and less useful because the board state has changed over the course of the game, you're still playing those cards. You're like, okay, I'm going to leave that one down at the bottom of my pile. I'm going to start putting other things on top of it. So you're going to bury that used engine, and you're going to be creating new engines based upon the new game state. And I like that. You're constantly like building new engines, building new engines, building new engines, getting things going. It's really interesting. Now the orders of the cards coming out, because they come out randomly, and because even the setup is randomly, it's basically got like unlimited replayability because, again, those cards are going to dictate what people are trying to do based upon what other people have done. And so as those cards come out, it's just going to make the game, it makes the game feel different. So I think that's really cool. Interaction. I love that no one owns anything on the board. This reminded me of Ecos, the first continent from AEG, a John D. Clare game where it was like bingo, but you're placing animals out on the board, and some people are eating other animals, some people are putting other things, and it's really interesting when you have a communal board that is changing and is different every game, but nobody owns anything on the board. What somebody does can influence what you do, and so on. So there's a lot of interaction in that way. This isn't a head-down solo Euro game. The iconography is actually pretty good on the cards. Even halfway through your first game, you probably won't even have to refer to the glossary quite that much, but there is a glossary that basically tells you what every card does, that is really good too. The end game of this is extremely intense. You get down to the end and you get down to the end of the pile, you get to the end pile, and these natural disasters start coming, and some of them give you a lot of points, but maybe if you're only the second person to take it, so it's like a little bit of a game of chicken there, and you've got this engine and you're seeing when the pile's getting short, so you're trying to get administrate before that, so you have all these cards to pick from, and then you can't administrate anymore. You're going to be playing cards, and trying to run your engine. And it can get really tense. You might have a bunch of cards, they have a bunch of cards, you're going back and forth and you're each passing each other. It's really tense. On the negative side of things, the game does not look nice. I mean, I don't know what it is, but a lot of the games from Friedemann Friese, it's almost like a Stefan Feld game where it needs to be ugly for some reason. The board is so bland looking. The art is not good. It just looks bland and boring. It screams for a deluxe edition. You think back to like the original Suburbia and the original Castles of Mad King Ludwig, the original Castles of Burgundy. 3 games that were excellent games, but they were ugly, and it really hurt them. In recent years, we've seen a new version of Suburbia, a new version of Castles of Mad King Ludwig, a new version of Castles of Burgundy. And they all make this game that is amazing pop with all these amazing colors and just vibrant and just great components. This needs that. Because the game is better than it looks. It does not look. It's not turning any heads. I just really wish they would have made this look nicer because it takes away from the experience, quite honestly. These basic wooden circles, right? For the settlements, they should have been cool looking buildings. Of course, I would have pushed the price point out of where it needed to be because they're all wooden components. I get it. But this thing screams for a deluxe edition with good art, something that vibrant. Look at the new Castles of Burgundy. The parts on this board that look bland look like the original Castle Burgundy blandness. But look what they did with that new version. That's what this should look like. This is what I want it to look like because the game deserves it. Now, a lot of people have said that this was their second favorite game to Power Grid from Friedemann Friese. But most of those people that said it before Findorf came out, which was Friedemann Friese's most recent design that has come out last year in 2022. I love Findorf too. It also uses a Power Grid aspect of the actual resource market where you're buying them and they're getting added, and then the second half they change over the course of the game. Findorf I loved as well, and that one has a lot of interaction, a lot of stuff as well, but it is takes about half the time as this game. So for me, I actually like Findorf better than Faiyum, but I really enjoy Faiyum a lot. If you're looking for that 2-hour-ish, 90 minutes to 2-hour Euro game that has this little engine building that's really good, that doesn't look very nice, but it really plays well, that's great. This is it. Findorf also is awesome, but is more like 60 to 75 minutes. It's almost in half the time, and it's really good and still has some crunchy stuff too. So I prefer, they're very different games. But since people were talking about their favorite, a lot of people say this is their second favorite. I probably would have said the same thing too until Findorf came out. But that's my second favorite. So that's what I think about Faiyum. This has been a Game Geek, breaking down barriers, growing relationships with board games by helping you find the next one you love. Game Toppers not only transforms your existing table into a high-quality gaming solution, but they now offer full leg kits and dining cover solutions for the full table application. Paired with over 20 styles of thematic game mats in 11 different sizes from notable board game artists like Vincent Dutray, collapsible cup holders, and real cool accessories, experience what thousands of other gamers enjoy by upgrading every game you play with a Game Topper system. Save hundreds of dollars on Game Topper package deals that are in stock now for immediate shipping at GameToppersLLC.com or click the link below.